Hey, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Frank About Health, a Stage of Epilepsy moment with Jeff Dimitrak and our special guest, Sam Diann. What I'd like to first say, besides my disclaimer, is that I am very much looking forward to this particular show as we are looking at a fellow epilepsy podcaster. Those of you, obviously, who've been watching Frank About Health over the last 2 years have known me to be an advocate for epilepsy. And then, of course, last year when I brought Jeff in, we decided to create a mini series within the Frank About Health network. But now to have a podcaster who talks about epilepsy, just like what my passion has been all along, I'm looking at what I would consider a colleague. And I'm looking forward to hear not just her epilepsy story, but also to watch what conversation that Jeff and her create, especially when figuring out how advocacy is actually a stage in living life with epilepsy. And how so? Well, there are the patients that have the auras and the treatments and the medicines and the alternative treatments and exposure to narcissism and all of the things that we've touched upon the past year. But now we're going to see it all wrapped up in a nice, neat package. And advocacy is the platform that most people who live life with epilepsy choose because the goal is always to remove the stigma. So now for the disclaimer. Any of the information that you learn tonight is meant for conversation purposes only, not to dissuade you from your ongoing treatment methodology with your PCP, primary care physician, or your neurologist, or your epileptologist, or any other mental health professional you might be having discussions with right now. If anything you hear tonight is food for thought that makes you want to consult with those people to see if there are other alternatives for treatment that could benefit you, by all means, I hope we've done you some justice there. But they are not the views of talkradio.nyc or of Frank About Health. Rather, again, food for thought within the epilepsy community that the three of us represent, but at the same time, the overall healthcare community. So, that all being said, Jeff, always welcome back. And Sam, welcome to Frank About Health.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. That was quite an intro. I love it. I might have to take some
Oh,
pointers
thank
from
you.
you.
Trust me, every time I do it, it's like I'm rehearsing for my next one.
I
the
love it.
the biggest issue with the disclaimer, trust me, that became a necessity after having some false stops and starts there for a while. But at least it now serves everyone better, including the guests, because I would never want to put you or even you, Jeff, at any risk for whatever you might be doing, especially in advocating epilepsy outside of the show.
Yeah, and I
You
think it's so
know, so
important that you have a disclaimer on all your social media accounts. It's really important.
Yes, I
oh,
need to do
absolutely.
that. I definitely need to do that.
We do know there are platforms that can be very misleading. So, for example, without mentioning one particular one, I have chose to become disassociated from it, even though I know that talk radio does stream to it, and I'm leaving it nameless. But they have become a platform that spreads a lot of stuff that just isn't fact checked, and I don't want to create, especially for a condition, let's say, like epilepsy, where everyone just uses what they observe when they don't live life with it as a label or some kind of misnomer rather than understanding what it really is about. So I think what's going to make this episode special is that not only will Jeff and I continue to talk about how the various stages are important for those living life with epilepsy to be mindful of, but you yourself, who also is living with it, but is able to educate people out there, even if they don't live with it, how to be able to best represent themselves with whatever their limitation might be, a socially considered limitation, let's just say.
Yes, yes, yes. And that's a really big thing about advocacy is just starting the conversation, I think. Just starting a
Yes.
conversation, even if it's I always say this, even if it's just like to people that you know in everyday life, friends, family, people you interact with. Just having a simple
Hmm.
conversation, that's advocacy. You don't need necessarily a whole platform like us to advocate for something that people are living with.
Exactly. And I guess you, Jeff, can also chime in wherever you feel. But I guess we have all three struggled with the misunderstandings that come with living life with it. I mean, having a seizure in front of somebody, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a family member. something like that, and they already have you labeled for anything from just being crazy to being a drug addict to being witchcraft possessed, whatever it might be. But the constant discomfort of feeling like being yourself is not enough, because you have to live through certain expectations that other people kind of impose upon you. By talking about it, you're creating the stage. You're not letting them create the stage for you. It becomes a
Yeah.
fight, kind of. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
it does.
and now they have something called a seizure action plan, and they've been advocating for this a lot. With as long as you have the beginnings of a plan, even if it's just a vague plan, it's important that you think about your medical plan, your safety, your and just advocacy moving forward.
Right, right. I think you used the word warrior, didn't you? In a previous show that we did together?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's just a term that the epilepsy community uses all the time, seizure warriors, and not everybody likes to call themselves a warrior because it's associated with, soldiers.
Well, true,
Um,
true, but you're right. I mean, a warrior, a fighter, an advocate, a someone who's really trying to make a stand and point out the difference that most people who don't live with epilepsy just don't see. I think that's kind of the unfortunate circumstance, that having an inorganic illness like the way cancer has tumors, for example, we're just dealing with brains that have hyperelectric charges. So as a result, we're always having to explain ourselves. So why not better than to explain what we're living with? So I'm just very excited that you're here on Frank About Health to just expose the truths of your podcast and of whatever you've written in the past that you'd like to share with the audience. But I think, if anything, just already thinking, what is your story based on? Is it genetic based epilepsy, or is it trauma based or comorbid epilepsy?
I don't know why I have epilepsy. My seizures came from just out of the blue. We have theories, my mom and we have theories as to why I have epilepsy. It doesn't run in my family. I'm the only one in my family with epilepsy. I was diagnosed with epilepsy at 11 years old after I had a petit mal, a petit mal, that it was considered a petit mal back then, when I was
Right.
11 in my history class. And I didn't have any tests done. I didn't have EEG, MRIs, nothing. Just straight off the bat, after my first seizure, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. And then
That's interesting.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You
And
said
then
from.
from there, my seizures started changing. They became grand mal or tonic-clonic seizures, and
Right.
ever since, it's kind of been like trying to figure out, like it's a puzzle, trying to figure out what is causing my epilepsy, what are my triggers. And at this point in my life, I kind of have a grasp on what my triggers are, but we're still with the theories on what caused it.
And that's
Understood.
such a big
Understood.
part of epilepsy. People speculating of what the cause of their epilepsy was. Can I find a pattern moving forward? And I think
Right.
that is so frustrating for so many people with epilepsy. It comes out of nowhere, and then they are trying to find a rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, and
And I gather those. Yeah.
unfortunately,
Unfortunately.
sometimes we don't have those answers. Our brains are so unique. Each seizure, each epilepsy story journey is so unique to each person that you can't really go based on what you see on social media or other people talking about.
Right.
Yeah, it's like that for them, but it may not be like that for you. We all have similarities,
Right.
but our story, our journey is so unique to each one of us, and that's how epilepsy is. It's unique to that person.
And as
Right.
soon as I
Right.
started my social media account, that was one thing I wanted to emphasize, is that every case of epilepsy is unique. And it's so important that everybody that is trying to understand epilepsy knows that not every case of epilepsy is the same.
Right, because depending on the individual and depending on the onset, there could be the genetic based, the comorbid based. You mentioned petit mal earlier, which I guess is now known as partial or
Yeah.
refractive, something like that, and you're
Focal
conscious
aware.
most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly. And I do suffer from that still, which is why I continue to take Keppra. Although my genetic based Grand Mal have been seizure free for 18 years. And I used to take Lamictal for that, but I no longer take Lamictal. So I guess on one aspect of the spectrum, I'm no longer considered a Grand Mal epileptic, if that's the right phrase to use. But having seizure conditions due to a lesion, I still live life with epilepsy. And, quite frankly, sometimes I would feel almost like vulnerable if I didn't take my medication. I don't know if it's a comfort level or if it just keeps me calm because Keppra does have that side effect for me. So you can
Well, and
imagine every time I
that's
do
another reason why it's so complicated, because they keep on changing the language of it. And every few years, there's a new term for complex partial seizure.
Yeah.
And really, then people don't know what they're talking about.
I was calling my
Right.
seizures grand malls until I started my social media a year ago. I didn't know it was changed to tonic-clonic until I was on social media. So yeah.
Interesting. So, like I found out mine is genetic, so I was always predestined to have it. And usually, the onset for genetic is during the puberty years. I guess hormonal output and other kinds of stimuli you go through in those years when you're in school, not having sleep because you're studying for all-night exams or whatever the other triggers might be. It just creates, okay, the gene has now been provoked. You will be a genetically based epileptic person. Ironically, my onset was in my history class too. So it's very interesting that we have that in common. Maybe I was
And
just
didn't
bored of the
you say
topic
that
and my brain decided to go to
you
sleep.
might think that yours are hormonal related?
I believe mine are hormonal related. I believe I have catamenial epilepsy because my first seizure started about a week or so around my first menstrual cycle. And ever since then, like clockwork, every month around my menstrual cycle comes a seizure. It wasn't until I gave birth to my daughter that I was seizure free for 2 years, no medication, nothing. And then I had a seizure, and now I just have them about every few months. But I take my rescue medicine that prevents me from having a tonic-clonic seizure.
Well, we're about to take our first break. Just want to read two comments that have come in from Roddy TV on YouTube. Nice background plant, which is what you have right there behind you. And Roddy also says, and I quote, I used to think all seizures were epilepsy and all epilepsy is just seizures. I've learned so much since coming across Sam Diann's social media. So you definitely have a following base, and we're going to learn more about that in the next segment right here on Frank About Health. So, ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned as we are here with Sam Diann, Figuring Out Epilepsy, which is also the name of her podcast. We will be back in a few right here on talkradio.nyc, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitch. See you soon.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. And as you've just seen during the commercial break, I was showing right there on Amazon a picture of her podcast, Figuring Out Epilepsy. And for that reason, Sam, I'd like to devote this segment of Frank About Health to learn more about that podcast and what is it you talk about, the type of guests you have. Was Jeff on there by any chance? Who knows? Maybe he can be at a later date. At the same time, I'd like to learn more about what kind of topics you discuss in the podcast when it comes to epilepsy.
So, my podcast is about what life is like with epilepsy. I invite anyone who has a story with epilepsy. Roddy TV. He was actually one of my guests on my podcast. He does not have epilepsy, but he did experience someone having a seizure at one of his old jobs. So I allow my platform to be for anyone who wants to talk about their journey, also talk about their experience with epilepsy as a caregiver, as a parent. I had Rod. I also had another friend who doesn't have epilepsy, but she also has she lives with a chronic illness, a different chronic illness than myself.
Right.
And I've talked to people in the epilepsy community who've written books on epilepsy. Jeff, of course, he's gonna be one of my guests. I haven't asked him, but he is. I'm
Nice.
Yeah, so it's really I try to focus on really the mental and emotional aspects of epilepsy, because that's the hardest thing that I've dealt with when it came to my journey, is just the mental and emotional aspects of dealing with it and just feeling like a burden and alone. I didn't talk about my epilepsy for 20 years. It wasn't until my brother helped me accept my epilepsy that I started talking and creating. I first created a blog, now a podcast, and
Right.
So what did you hold it inside, and it what came out all at once? And
I would hold it. Everything that I was feeling, I would hold it, or I would journal it. I've been journaling since I was maybe like 10, 11 years old. It's something that my dad and I have in common. We love writing. So he showed me like, hey, you're dealing with some things that you don't always want to talk about. So he got me a journal, and I've been journaling ever since. I think that's a huge help that kept me somewhat sane in those years that I did not speak about epilepsy, because I didn't talk about it with my family, my friends. When my family would bring it up, I would kind of change the subject. They would, be concerned about something. I'll be like, "Oh, you worry too much. It's not that bad. My epilepsy's not that bad." But in reality, I'm falling on the ground every time I have a seizure. So, I
think talking about
scars.
that journaling is so important. People relate to that, especially people with temporal lobe epilepsy. I talk about hypographia and how so many people with temporal lobe epilepsy have that.
Yeah,
Right.
I think journaling is a huge help. They suggest to have a seizure diary. That my mom, when I was growing up, my mom did the seizure diary for me, and that's how we figured out what my triggers were. And then the journaling was just me, what I was going through. So I think, and then I also do gratitude journaling. So It's a specific type of journal where
Yeah.
you just talk about everything that you're grateful for, and it keeps you in a more positive light. Because sometimes
Right.
epilepsy gets pretty dark. I've dealt with a lot of
Mm-hmm.
mental health
Yes.
issues.
Yes. Yes. And that's what Frank About Health tries to do as a result. I mean, I can say that my comorbidities are of the mental health variety. I have a regulated sense of PTSD. I've been exposed to narcissism all over the place, even within families. And I've dealt with depression and anxiety and other kinds of issues. But what I find interesting, and I'm sure you've experienced this, Sam, is that just doing the podcast in itself helps regulate all of that.
Oh yes. Since I
You're living in
started,
the moment.
yes, since I started posting on social media and the podcast and everything, I feel like I can be myself. Like there has been a weight lifted off my shoulders and I can just be myself. I don't have to hide that part of me that is socially, however people want to consider it, unacceptable,
Right.
the stigmas that come with it. I don't have to worry about that. I can just be myself regardless how people view me and my epilepsy.
And you told
Correct.
me that you're an outgoing person
Yes.
naturally. So, having a podcast, it's for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am an outgoing person, but on video and on camera, I can be quite shy. so, I'm outgoing if it's just close friends and stuff and we're just having conversations like that. But once you put me on camera, I'm like, oh no. I start panicking. But
Well,
Yeah, but I think
you
the first time you go on camera, I think it's natural for anyone to feel a little bit shy. It's a little bit just nerving. I don't know. It makes you a little bit nervous.
you do get used to it. I find myself getting used to being on camera more and more, and I'm posting more and more videos. So
yes,
you kind of
yes.
get used to it, yeah.
Well, it seems to me that I mean, you were basically more succumbed to the stigma because I don't know if you were coached along with a neurologist or somebody, a medical professional that you would see once a year or twice a year. Were you?
I see since I was diagnosed, I've been seeing my neurologist for every 3 months. I see my neurologist.
Oh, good.
Growing
Good.
yeah, growing up, I did not get along with my neurologist. Growing up, I did
I
not get
can
along with
understand.
him. We were in constant battles, and when I say we, I mean me and my mom, because she was the one that was right there, advocating
Right.
for me. And yeah, during that time, we did not get along with him because we would tell him, "Hey, my hormones have something to do with my seizures. My my hormones are triggering it. It's always around my menstrual cycle," but he did not want to believe us. I didn't know catamenial epilepsy was a thing until I started getting more involved with the epilepsy community.
Right.
And I think
Right.
that a lot of
Well,
people can relate to that they have a neurologist that is not listening to you, that
Yeah.
wants to do it their way. They have a medication in mind and they want you on that medication and
Yes.
they don't want to hear anything else.
Yes. And then with me, my weight would always fluctuate. So and my medicine was based on my weight. So my medicine was
mhm.
never where it was supposed to be, and my neurologist just accused me of dieting and this and that when my mom was just like pumping food in me and like shakes and just making sure I have a good healthy diet. Sometimes I would force myself to eat because I didn't want to get yelled at by the neurologist. Even to this day, sometimes I force myself to eat because that can cause me to have a seizure. Not
Interesting.
eating well is a trigger of mine.
Well,
So
I
you
think
have
it's a
never
trigger
been
for
told by
so
any
many
doctor
people.
that you have. All right, I'm sorry. Say that again, Jeff.
I think that diet and a
Yes.
consistent and healthy diet is if you don't stay on that diet, it can be a trigger.
Jeff has been like my
Right.
trainer lately because I've go to him. I know like he's really big on exercise and diet, and that's what I'm implementing in my life this year. And I'm like, Oh, I just started running, but I can't run because sometimes like my eyes start twitching. I feel like maybe I'm going to have a seizure, maybe not. So Jeff is kind of guiding me on how to implement, proper diet and exercise. So,
Well, and you don't have to
So,
work out
Sam,
at the gym every day. I think all you have to do is just take a walk. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And that will keep you healthy or just to not eat so much junk food. If you have a sweet tooth or something like that.
that's my problem. I have the biggest sweet tooth, and sugar is a trigger of mine.
I'm guilty too.
I have a question. Hello. Okay,
Yes.
so Sam, that being said, if a doctor was to tell you that you have genetic-based epilepsy, would you find yourself in the mindset to agree with them at this point, or would you still be resistant or feel you're not sure? Or what would be your takeaway from that kind of diagnosis?
I would be open to what the doctor has to say. I would want to see the proof. Where does it show in my test that that's the kind of epilepsy I have, that it's genetic based? And
Right.
I would have questions like, okay, so what does that mean now? What does that mean as far as my epilepsy journey? Because for so many years, how long it's been over 20 years with me having epilepsy. Now it's completely changed. I just need to know, like, where's my life going to go from now? Is my treatment going to be the same? Are we going to try new treatments? What's going to happen?
Right. The one thing I could tell you, as one who has been diagnosed with genetic-based epilepsy, I've been given the medications for those living life with epilepsy that are genetically programmed for those fitting the criteria. I've had Depakote, then I went to Lamictal, and it was Lamictal that turned off the trigger. But the thing is that it required seeing an epileptologist here at the NYU Langone Comprehensive Epilepsy Center. So if you don't have that kind of doctor, which I myself had neurologists that were treating me like, oh, you just have the seizure of the moment, let me give you the drug of the moment. And of course, when I grew up and I went to school and studied this more, I got my master's degree in neuropsychology, and I was trying to understand the comorbidities of depression and anxiety and also understand the genetic basis. This was the place I learned it. And now I learned, instead of being resistant to it, how to, like we said earlier, be an epilepsy warrior over it and re-educate people, because that's the only way you can remove stigma. It's education and communication.
And I'm actually trying to see an epileptologist. I hope I said that. I'm having such a hard time with that word, but I'm actually trying to see one.
Well, I can give you a referral if you want.
I would love one. That would be amazing. Thank you. I'm really trying to see one because, with my epilepsy, I believe that my epilepsy has to do with my hormones. So I really want to get the proper treatment, because as of right now, I take Lamictal and Zonegran. I also take clonazepam as my rescue medicine. So I just want to know if it's the proper medication for me and my situation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we have to take another quick break, but when we return, I will give you all that information live with everyone listening, because NYU's Epilepsy Center is analyzing genetic causes and looking for cures. And it's also a teaching hospital. So I will be able to give that all to you when we get back. So ladies and gentlemen, you all know, just stay tuned to these next few messages, and we'll be back in a few.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
What really drives success in business? Introducing Intangify, the show that explores the intangible assets that create value and growth. I'm Matthew Asbell, your host, attorney focused on innovation. Join me Fridays at noon Eastern to discover how innovation, culture, and other intangibles shape thriving companies, from startups to established businesses. We'll share strategies to unleash your business's true potential. Tune in live on talkradio.nyc Fridays at noon Eastern and intensify your business today.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. Just a few announcements. What I just showed you during the commercial break is Jeff Dimitrak's book, Dating in the Dark, now available on audiobook as well. And basically, this is my also promotion to get him on your show, Sam. So you're doing the right thing by having him be one of your next guests. That all being said, I'm also going to do a comment that Roddy just issued out during the break. Quote unquote, do you guys think more people experience anxiety and depression now more than ever? Or has it always been as prevalent and now we are just all admitting to these things? I have my opinions, but I'm going to let first you, Jeff, and then you, Sam, talk about what Roddy's asking. Starting with you, Jeff.
I think that it's more prevalent now, and the statistics show that it is. And I would say that, yes, the pandemic didn't help. Us staying inside, increased social anxiety. And I would say, I'm thinking about this because really there isn't a wrong answer to this. There are so many different types of anxiety and so many different types of depression as well. So I think that we have to be not careful, but understand what our best way to cope is, and move forward with our anxiety if we know that we have that, because there is a healthy anxiety, and
yes,
and we have to use that to be productive in society.
Right. Sam, what do you have to say about Roddy's comment?
I agree with Jeff that it's, we're seeing it a lot more, but I also think it's because people are speaking out about it a lot more too. I see it a lot with men now, that men are starting to speak up and admit that they have anxiety or depression, when back then it wasn't considered manly or masculine to admit to something like that. And we're seeing it more and more on social media, where guys are saying, yeah, I deal with this. I see it within my own family who have talked about it. So I think the fact that we're speaking about it more is definitely helping.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like you're releasing what's on your mind most of the time. And if you're used to keeping things hidden because you're concerned about the stigma associated with it, it's when you release it out there, especially on a podcast platform, that you have this sense of calm and relaxation after you're finished your show. I know that's what happens to me every week. But to answer your comment, Roddy, I think that anxiety and depression are comorbid illnesses or side effects of people living life with epilepsy. The more frequent your seizures, the more depressed you would get. The anxiety could be just the social trepidation of feeling like if you have a tic or an aura or some sensation that doesn't feel right, you're like getting anxious about where you need to be, or how to prevent falling and hitting your head, or or what you're going to look like, especially if it's at a social function. So the anxiety is more socially based in my view, but the depression is definitely when you're using medication, anticonvulsants, to slow the brainwave patterns and prevent the frequency of seizures, especially if you have 10 a day, or God forbid, if you're Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. That's a very sad story or a sad case. But the thing is that depression is an expected comorbidity of epilepsy. So that being said, I think people are willing to talk more about epilepsy because they want to prevent the depression from consuming their lives overall, even when they're not having seizures. And what Jeff alluded to about COVID is that we were all experiencing, disassociation from each other, and wearing masks all the time, and whether or not the disease was real or imagined. So I think that would just make anyone anxious or depressed. And so what's ironic is while epilepsy is not a comorbidity of COVID, nor if you had epilepsy would you be guaranteed to get it, but it basically allowed us who already lived with a condition that had a stigma to be more vocal about it, while everyone was absorbed around COVID. So COVID actually gave us much of a higher platform. So I would have to say that in
I
some
think it's
ways, Roddy.
also important how you manage your stress too, especially people with epilepsy, because stress is such a high trigger.
For a lot of people, yeah.
Right. But I was going to conclude by saying, in some ways, Roddy, it appears that we are just all admitting it now, but people within the epilepsy community have been admitting it for over 10 years now. So you really have to think in terms of the individuals that are admitting it. How severe is their epilepsy? Are they just living with people who have it when they don't? And those advocates, of course, will admit it more as well because they want to create the social support network that those patients need. And to echo Jeff's comment on managing your stress, it kind of alludes to your next comment, Roddy, about Sam being a huge advocate for men's mental health, because think about it. If men are programmed by societal standards not to show vulnerability, the stress is going to be much higher. All right. So you, Sam, advocating on your platform is allowing people like myself, men like Jeff, to go out there and shout that we have epilepsy with pride, because there are opportunities that befall us when we are open about it. I know I've seen that in my life. So I guess I'm kind of hoping that's what you are all experiencing as well. And I know you at the same time, Sam. I was going to tell you about how you can diagnose if your epilepsy is genetic in nature. I'm going to give you the name of a doctor, Dr. Daniel Luciano, who's located at the NYU Langone Comprehensive Epilepsy Center, who does a lot of genetic-based studies on epilepsy, as well as he's been involved in looking at what was that show that we did, Jeff, on psychogenic seizures. He's
Okay.
also talked about that. And then
And
there's
I was
another
going to
man.
mention psychogenic seizures when it comes to advocacy, because I think that this show it comes back to trauma. A lot of trauma comes back. You want to advocate for yourself. You need to advocate for yourself, and
Yeah.
especially when you have experienced trauma. And a lot of people
Right,
with psychogenic seizures, that's the reason why they're having it.
Correct, Jeff. But Sam, that man, Dr. Daniel Luciano, also works with Dr. Oren Davinsky, who was one of the first advocates for cannabis treatment for epilepsy back in 2016. And there are also psychiatrists on staff that would be able to address those trauma issues that you talk about, Jeff, because whether the trauma is PTSD related or whether it's unfortunately being hit by a car, let's say, and suffering seizures because of a coma you were in,
Mm-hmm.
that it could be a physical or a psychological trauma that would have its role in epilepsy formation or in trying to manage your life with epilepsy, which may have become a comorbid illness as a result of that head trauma or whatever was going on. So I hope I was able to provide you, Sam, and you, Roddy, with answers to your questions. And Sam, again, if you want the information on the doctor, email me after the show and I can give you all the location information. We can talk more about that.
That'd be amazing.
The other thing is, Roddy, you have another comment. Thank you for giving your thoughts. Wow, Sam, I got to have you on my show more often. Bring all your tribe with you. It says, thank you for giving your thoughts, loving this live, and subscribing. You know what, Logan, behind the scenes, we have, I think, our 100th subscriber now from Frank About Health.
Thanks, Rod.
I'm happy. Yes, thanks, Rod. And also check out all of the other shows we've done, especially on mental health issues. So you would be able to get a broader spectrum about what Frank About Health does. But again, Sam, you and Jeff need to get together and do a show in February. And at the same time, hopefully I'll have you, Sam, and you, Jeff, come with me live at a Hilton in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So we can really follow up this conversation beyond just promoting your podcast, which from what I'm seeing, even on your TikTok reels that I've also took a look at, you definitely are leading the charge in an area of epilepsy, which I really wholeheartedly believe. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I wholeheartedly believe yours is genetic based.
Okay. I definitely need to get in contact with that doctor.
Okay. And so meanwhile, Jeff, did you have any other comments about trauma? I'm sorry if I interrupted you there for a second.
No, I was just, it was something that just came to mind that I wanted to mention earlier in the show. And, why advocacy is important. I had something written down here. I mean, sometimes it is uncomfortable and difficult to know what the right things to say are, especially when advocating for yourself, your health, and possibly even for someone else's health. And today, when you hear the stories of those living with epilepsy, it seems like the topic of trauma comes up so often, and many forms of trauma, sexual trauma, cultural trauma, emotional trauma, and many of these traumas are associated with psychogenic seizures. And it's uncomfortable conversations, but it's time to have these conversations.
Absolutely. Because who better than to help people deal with things, whether it's COVID or, God forbid, the next pandemic or epidemic that occurs, or other kinds of life-altering conditions that people can actually live with. We know best, from our own experience, that is, that it is possible to live a high-quality life even with the condition. The quick response is, where's the cure? Where's the cure? But sometimes there are no cures, just solutions. And that's what I think all of us need to take away, especially before we go to our next break. So that being said, when we return, we will talk more about the future of following life with following epilepsy. Please announce your show in the right way.
Figuring out epilepsy.
Thank you. As well as the future with stages of epilepsy and Frank About Health. We'll be back in a few.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back. Just wanted to show you guys we are streaming live on YouTube, and thanks again for Roddy for your participation on this show. Also, again, thank you, Sam, for talking about your journey. Apparently, you sound a lot like me, that it's something that you live with and you're going to make the best out of it. And that's the right path to have at this point, instead of worrying about stigmas. I mean, again, at this point, they're just messages. They're just not the people for you in your pathway, rather than worried about what people think. It's just a message that they're not the individual that is going to expand the boundaries of your success, your individuality, your quality of life. And you want to find those people. So that all being said, maybe I'm on my own little soapbox right now, but I'm really honored that you have appeared what is technically my 102nd show. And when it all began as really was going to be called Frank About Epilepsy, it now has become into a very viable ecosystem for various communities. And I'm looking forward to this year expanding it further. And I think someone with your experience already, especially with your podcast and on social media, I hope we get to collaborate more together in the future, as Jeff and I have done over the past year. In terms of the future of Frank About Health, I only, knock on wood, I only see a lot of progression happening in the next few months. But at the same time, that is also based on the participation of the hosts and the guests, and of course now our social media audience that is interacting with us. So that all being said, Jeff, can you tell us of some insights that you're going to be exploring over the next few months, besides being on Sam's show?
Insights of stages of epilepsy?
Yeah, or any walks that you're going on, or any kind of social events that you're going to be hosting?
Oh, I was going to go on a walk this year at some point. Haven't figured that out because it's still early in the year and they're still posting it on the Epilepsy Foundation website. So, well, I'll try to get to the West Coast. I always go to Phoenix, but I'm going to try to make it maybe to Utah or somewhere out there. I don't know, Colorado or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
So,
and you deal a lot closely with the Epilepsy Foundation, right?
well, they are usually the ones that sponsor the epilepsy walks. Yeah.
Right. I know my involvement continues to be with FACES, Finding a Cure for Epilepsy and Seizures, right here at NYU. They have their annual conference, their annual game day. Sometimes their conference may look at mRNA vaccines for epilepsy, which I think is a long road away. But the thing is, it's promising. And I think the more we communicate about epilepsy and advocate for it, we can find, if not necessarily a cure, just a better way to live life with it. And that's all we can really hope for. But you can't, once you start, you definitely can't stop. It's something that you have to also become more mindful, as Roddy was asking about earlier, to the mental and neurological comorbidities that are attuned to people with epilepsy, whether it's what they said, petit mal, grand mal, genetic based, comorbid, or even psychogenic. Everyone is a different case and a different story, but epilepsy, or rather seizures, are the symptom of something deeper. And I think that by talking about epilepsy, we get to know what the deeper cause is and learn to treat that, which is what most people historically.
Well, one of our biggest shows was the struggle for independence. And one guarantee that you have when living with epilepsy is that there's going to be more adversity. There's going to be more
Yes.
struggles, and when having seizures, you might lose things or you might have disappointments that because you plan something and seizures get in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And John Lennon did say, life is what happens when you're making other plans. So the thing is that if you take those mantras as part of your own, let's just say, roadmap, I don't want to say your own Bible, but your own roadmap as you continue to live life and advocate with epilepsy, they can be subtle messages and supporting experiences rather than moments of disappointment. Sometimes what you've lost was meant to be lost. Otherwise, it would have held you back in a different way. That's what
Yeah.
I've taken away from it.
Yes, definitely.
Overall, I'm interested to know more. Sam, how did you manage to get yourself on TikTok with an issue like epilepsy? I mean, I find it difficult to even see nutrition or any other healthcare topic on something that only lasts 2 to 3 minutes long.
Um, well, when I first started my social media journey, I wanted to expand to other channels, other platforms. I eventually want to do like a vlog style YouTube channel where I show everyone my life, what it's like with epilepsy and the not so pretty parts. Um, and TikTok, TikTok is so popular and I love being on TikTok. So I really incorporated the trends, whatever's going on TikTok and kind of incorporated into epilepsy because a lot of things, it kind of weaves into our lives with epilepsy. So that's really what I'm trying to show people is that, you can live a normal life with epilepsy. You can um have dreams and goals and be ambitious. You don't have to let your epilepsy stop you from living your life.
Right, right. And that message has to be shouted multiple times
Yes.
in multiple volumes, in multiple locations, 24/7, 365, or in this case, 366 for 2024.
Yes. And I
We are
always
in a leap
say,
year.
and I always say too, I have it on my Instagram that epilepsy is not the end, but rather the beginning to something different. So if you have
That's right.
that positive attitude towards life with a chronic illness, it gets better and you feel like you're more free.
Right, right. What I could say is that while we all talk about comorbid illness associated with epilepsy, there's also what I've discovered, and I don't know, maybe you, Jeff, or you, Sam, could echo this. I discovered comorbid gifts or instincts or intuition or creative ideas or opportunities that you would not have probably had if you didn't have a history of seizures. Would that be safe to say in either one of your cases?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. Go ahead, Sam.
No, go. You can go.
Okay. Well, we talked about this on our neurodiversity show that people with epilepsy, maybe they are more empathic to other people and they have this, skill or they have this talent of understanding what they're feeling from other people and
Right.
so they have this intuition that they didn't have before they were diagnosed.
Yeah, because you figure if you're always feeling, well, am I feeling good today? Am I about to have a seizure? Meanwhile, you look sad. I think I understand what you're feeling. you know,
Yes.
that empathic thing that you're talking about, and also always the interest in trying to understand what is unexplainable. There's no stigma if you're looking to understand why. Stigmas are for people who don't want to be bothered. That's the way I look at it.
I mean, that
Just
is
like
a
what your
good
shirt
way.
says. Pretty sure I seized the wrong day.
I love that shirt.
I do too.
Because that's usually how it happens.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, like when you're about to go take a trip. Oh, I
I
guess
don't
there
think
goes.
this is what was meant by the shirt, actually.
No, but it has its role. I could see that. Oh, I thought Roddy made another comment. Oh, no, sorry. I'm just seeing the warning that we're 2 minutes to end. Gee, you know what, Sam? Oh, you know what? You got to forgive me. I'm about to say the Cheers joke you probably heard. Sam and Diane, you
I
know,
actually
from the show,
haven't heard
TV
it.
show.
I
Wow. So then,
actually
talk
haven't
about
heard it.
empathy. Okay, well, I was about to say Sam and Diane, but I am going to say Sam and Jeff. We're about 2 minutes to ending. So that being said, we need to have another show together, maybe next month or
Yes.
maybe the month after, and maybe at Hilton. So well, let's plan that out.
I
And
would
then
love
again,
that.
as soon as yeah, and as soon as we get off the show, please email me so I can have your well, I do have your email address, but email
Mhm.
me a reminder to get you the information at the NYU Comprehensive Epilepsy Center so you can do whatever you need to do to find out more about your epilepsy.
Okay.
So that'll be said, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow's slate of shows on talkradio.nyc will begin at 10 a.m. with Philanthropy and Focus and Tommy D. At 11 o'clock, always Friday with Steve Fry. 12 o'clock, Intangify with Matthew Asbell. Tuesday at 5 p.m., we will have The Hard Skills with Dr. Mira Branku. And then next Thursday, after the Conscious Consultant Hour with Sam Leibowitz at 12 noon, I'll be back with another episode at 5 p.m. of Frank About Health. Please continue to support our YouTube channel, as Roddy did. Take a lesson from him. And again, Sam, make sure you get Jeff on your show.
I
And
will.
Jeff, we'll definitely talk probably in the next few days about our next show together. And thank you all for watching this episode of Frank About Health. I will definitely see you all next week. And we're signing off now. So take care to all of you. See you soon. Bye-bye.